Hello and welcome to the Macca's Talk Hockey Podcast, the podcast where me and my brother Charlie talk about English ice hockey, specifically the NIHL. And we've got Dan with us as well. And this is another episode. I think it is week 19, has just finished of the National League. It is really hotting up the title race, the playoff battle. There's some new imports which are signed as well. So we're going to go through the news. Charlie's got a little message as well, or announcement, or whatever he wanted to say. And then we're going to go through every single game, or go through last weekend or the weekend just gone. We might have an interview, we might not. We'll have to see if the player we interview a player. So I'm not going to say who it is, but if we do have one, it will be edited into this. But if not, we're just going to crack through it and starting with the news. And the one which was a day after we recorded, Dan, Ed Bradley signed a 2-year extension. Actually, before we get into that, Charlie, do you want to just say your little message?
Oh yeah. I'm just taking a 6-week break from the podcast. I think I'll do some of the interviews with Jack, so it's not like just a one-on-one. But yeah, I just need to take some time, focus on work. And I'm a bit hockeyed out at the moment. Just to put it blunt, we talk about hockey a lot, so I'm just gonna take a bit of a break, focus on some stuff. I've got a big trip planned for February, so I really want to put all my thought and time into that at the moment. But I should be back around March time when the crunch season gets going. So this will be like last podcast probably until about March, and then I'll be back for the crunch end of the season. But yeah.
Yeah, so you'll just come back whenever you want to, and hopefully do some interviews. But Dan, you'll still be here to do the podcast, and then Dad can hop on as well if he needs to. He might have some special guests come on as well. I know there's a few fans and other creators who want to come on, but you're more than happy to keep going, aren't you, Dan?
Yeah, I'll do it. Why not? It's a bit of fun, isn't it?
Me and Dan aren't as outdoorsy and spontaneous as Charlie, but there's nothing wrong with that either. So let's get into the first bit of news, which was Ed Bradley signing a 2-year extension. And I was absolutely buzzing with this. Really nice guy. I've got to know Ed this season as well, obviously with Swindon. 2-year extension. It just seems like he's loving it, Charlie. And he's having a fantastic season. And this was one of his best weekends as well.
Yeah, I'm happy with Ed. I think he suits playing on a better team. I think he's adapted well in Swindon, and yeah, I'm just happy to see him playing a team which is winning, which is thriving. And I think he suits playing not as the main D man. I think
Yeah.
his strengths are in his attacking output, and if you can put him with a guy who can maybe cover for some of his defensive mistakes, I think you really see his attacking output shine. And I think he's pretty much on a point a game this year, and he's not playing like top PP really.
No.
So it just shows you how good at his attacking from D is when he's getting nearly a point a game as a British defenseman who plays second PP. It just shows the amount of points the guy can get, and I think he's got 9 goals this year as well. So he's a big asset to Swindon. I think he really suits playing that second pair next to a defensive guy, and he can just really show his attacking abilities off, as well as he was very good with Wales at the start of the year as well.
Yeah, I think he's played way too much ice time, Dan, over the past few years with Bees, with Bristol. We're talking 30 minutes a night, and that can get to you as a young lad. And I think we've seen the best all round Ed Bradley. Defensively, I think he's taken a massive step up because he's just not having to play 25, 30 minutes every single night. And you're just seeing the best of him this season.
Yeah, and also I think, like Charlie said, he's an offensive D man. Like we all know that, and he in Swindon he can show off what offensive abilities he's got because he knows he's going to be covered.
Yeah.
But obviously, when he was in obviously lesser teams like Bristol and Bees, you don't have those players that can sort of cover his position. So he was sort of having to stay held back, but at the same time he wanted to produce offense as well. So in Swindon, he's been able to do both, and he's really been able to sort of switch up his play up and down the ice, and he's been given a lot more opportunities and different roles under Nell as well.
Yeah, so I'm really buzzing with that. So 2 more seasons after this of Bradley. And then the Bristol Pitbulls, obviously Nick Price left. I think we spoke about that, Charlie, last week, but they have signed their replacement. And he is an American forward, 6'2", Mitchell Walensky. And he played for a few ECHL teams. It didn't quite work out in those teams. As I've spoke to a few players who played in the ECHL, and it is very, very cutthroat. But he has signed for the Pitbulls, and it's not a bad mid-season signing, Charlie. But obviously, he's got a massive responsibility to try and fill the boots of Nick Price, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's kind of I feel for him a little bit because he's come into a situation which is pretty tough at the moment. He's joined Bristol and he's replaced probably their best player this season. I think would we all agree on that? Nick Price
Yeah.
being Bristol's
Yeah.
best player, which is never an easy role. But I think for his first weekend he started off well. He's got a decent CV on him, but as we've seen in this league, CV isn't everything. Some players with great CVs aren't as good as you'd expect, and other players, for an example, Owen Sobchak, who doesn't have the best CV, is second, well, joint top point scorer in the league. And yeah, he had a decent start to the weekend. I watched actually the first two periods of the Sheffield Bristol game, and he scored a good snipe in that one. He put that far shelf. That was a good goal. So yeah, I think it's going to take him a bit of time to settle. He's come into a tough job, especially as they didn't have Harewood on the Sunday and they were missing quite a few players still. So I think give him a couple of weeks to settle and we'll see how good what's his first name?
Mitchell.
Mitchell is. I did think it's Mitchell is.
They call him Mitch, I think. So yeah, that's Mitchell Walensky. And then the other one, Dan, was the Raiders have signed a new import. So they're back to 4 imports. And he did play yesterday, but I think he literally just got to the country this week. But they have signed Reed Morrison. And I think that is injury cover for Leishram. He is just so unlucky this season, isn't he, Dan? With the amount of injuries that he has got. But Reed Morrison, decent. As we say, we can only go off what they've played in so far. But he played in the U Sports. He got some decent points in the U Sports as well. And then he played a bit of ECHL again, didn't quite work out. It's so cutthroat there, and he's come over to Romford. So be interesting to see how he fits in. And yeah, he'll be next to TJ and Jake Sylvester. So hopefully he can create a good partnership with them.
Yeah, and it's important that Romford did get that other import in. Obviously, they released like Yokoyama, because obviously he went down, but yeah, it's important that they got those three imports, and it's always hard signing imports halfway through the year, and the fact that Romford have managed to do that is really important. But he's a big guy, and hopefully, as he gets a bit more comfortable in Romford, they said on their little press release thing that he should be good on their special teams.
Yeah.
So having a guy like that can play in his special teams and hopefully make a big impact on that, alongside obviously Miller and Schufelt, that's always going to be good. So fingers crossed he can get settled in quickly and they can start trying to pick up form come to the end of the season.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, we'll have to see what the Raiders like. You did make a good point to me, Dan, though, Dan. He won't be able to play in that cup final because he hasn't played a cup game. So if Leishram can't play, it does mean they have to play the two imports, not three. So, but they're still going to give Leeds, I think, a really good double header. So that is the transfer news, if you want to call it. The other bit of news we wanted to quickly shout out. We don't really talk about the league below too much, the National One, but some crazy cup scenes. I'd love to be a Chelmsford fan right now because they were 6-1 down after the first leg in the semi-final, and they had to go away to Streatham, 5 goals down, and they won 5-0 to take it to overtime. So it was 6-6 on 6-6 on aggregate, and then they scored in overtime to beat Streatham. Dan, that's absolutely ridiculous, isn't it?
I mean, what an away day.
Oh,
If you're an away fan there, you're going to be buzzing for about 2 weeks, I think.
yeah.
But I mean, that's why we love hockey, right? Like, you can never count any team out. And that's the thing about going over 2 legs. Obviously, if that team on the second leg isn't on their top performance, they could always be overtaken.
Yeah.
And you go into that game sort of with a mindset like it's a new game. And I mean, that's what they did. And fair play to them for getting that win, because that is huge, especially going to Streatham as well. Like, that's not an easy place to go. And
Yeah.
it's not an easy team to play either.
And then Solent beat Slough. as well. So two, you'd say cup upsets. They also made a comeback and did it in Slough. You mentioned, Charlie. So a Solent versus Chelmsford final. So yeah, fair play, and we love the upsets. Even if we don't watch the national one too much. But we'll start with the game on Friday. Then back to the National League, and we did actually watch this one, Charlie, on the stream. And it was Leeds Knights 6, Steel Dogs 1, and I don't think the scoreline really reflects how the game went because I thought for the first half of the game, the first half of the game, period and a half, I thought Sheffield were the better team. They outshot Leeds in that first period, but they just couldn't finish their dinner, and they got punished at the back end of the second period. And then Leeds just played a really, really nice third period and scored 4 goals in it, Charlie.
Yeah, it felt a little bit similar to the semi-final first leg, apart from the fact
Yeah.
Leeds were a bit more ruthless in the third period. But
Yeah.
Sheffield really were the better team for 2 periods. Gospel again was Gospel, kept them in it pretty well. And then in the third period, I thought that was one of the best periods I've seen Leeds play this season. They just dominated. And the one thing they're very good at is Dan Crowe had a pretty good game in the first 2 periods, but in the third period they were like shoot low and get rebounds. And when you do that, your fortunes change. And they really did just shoot low on him, take the chances, and showed why they're a team not to be messed about with, because we know Sheffield are not an easy team to play against. They're a tough team in this league, and Leeds ended up making it look pretty easy in the end. But I thought, yeah, maybe the scoreline didn't quite reflect it, but it was probably a lack of clinicality. But as well as that, Sam Gospel just standing on his head. It was one of his master classes.
It was a weird game actually because both teams in the back of their mind knew they got 3 games. Leeds know they got Swindon the next day, and Sheffield know they got MK the next day. So you could tell they both didn't really go for it like we've seen in other games. It was quite reserved. There wasn't much pushing. There wasn't much hitting. Everyone was just quite safe, and Leeds just ended up getting the win in the end. So that was one of the rescheduled games. So that was one of the games Leeds had in hand, and they got the 2 points. And then moving to the Saturday, and after a dramatic comeback win against Swindon, Dan, the whole Seahawks lose to the Peterborough Phantoms, and the Phantoms are on a bit of a roll at the moment, aren't they? I think they've got 4 wins on the bounce now. And Jarvis Hunt, we spoke about him, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and he got the opening goal on the power play in the slot, like we talked about, Dan. We could tell you what's going to happen. And they end up beating the whole Seahawks 4-3. And that is a statement performance, isn't it? Because as Swindon knew from last week, it's not an easy place to go to.
No, it definitely isn't. And the thing with Peterborough right now is they've got a lot of guys that are hot. They've got a lot of guys that are really switched it on at the minute. They've got obviously Duncan Spears, he's getting a few goals. You've got Jarvis Hunt, like we said. You obviously got Huff as well, that's carrying on his scoring form. Lakinen's just feeding every player in the team. And I mean, their special teams as well. Their special teams have been really good. And that's always going to be a positive to win you a game. But, you know, I mean, we were talking about it, and I think it went to 3-2, and I think Peterborough shut the game down with like 8 minutes to go.
Yeah,
So
it went to 4-3, and they shut down the whole last
yeah,
12 minutes of the game. And
so
I can imagine the pressure, like the pressure on Swindon for that game last weekend. I can imagine the pressure which Hull put on, but Peterborough and Levine, and that's someone you wanted to quickly talk about, Charlie. Since that tough game against Bristol, where he let in, I think it was 10 goals or 11 goals,
10,
he has been probably their best player, actually, just keeping him in all the games, isn't he?
Yeah, 2 players quick. Leving's been really good since the Bristol game, 9-6, basically 9-1, 9-3, 9-5. So he's stood on his head. And his save percentage is comfortably in the nines, is 9.3. And so he's doing really well, and fair play to him. He's doing what you expect from an import, but he's kind of got his head back together and he seems to be doing really well. But there's one player I think is going very under the radar this year, and Phantoms have had some big problems with D this year with injuries again, which is kind of ironic because we had that chat with Slava at the start of the year and he was like, I hope I don't get injuries again. But one guy who's been consistent throughout, and as well as that, is I think having potentially his best point scoring season, and he's taken the top PP spot, is Callum Douglas. He's 28 now, so he's kind of going into his prime. But he's on 20 points in 36 games with 4 goals and 16 assists, and he's taken the top PP spot. And it looks like Phantoms in the last 4 games have had a really good PP. So a guy maybe in a team with Norton and Brad Barron, you wouldn't expect to be on the top PP. He's taken the top PP, and I think he's done a really good job with it. And yeah, just one of them guys that I think goes under the radar. And he just kind of really discreetly does his job. But he's one of the reasons Slava is so successful, because when he's on his day and he's got that amazing long reach of his, he's really tough to get past.
I
Yeah.
mean, we saw it in Coventry like last
Yeah, he
season.
got a
He literally
masterclass.
shut down Brown. Like
Yeah,
his stick was unreal in that game, and that's
And he
like the
scored.
best of
I know it
Booba.
didn't go in, but he did actually score the overtime winner as well against Telford. I know it didn't cross the line, but he was the guy who scored that goal. So
yeah,
he's that.
he's
Yeah, you're right.
really
He actually
he's
does
a,
go under the radar.
he's a
He's
huge
really
player.
earned his trust under Slava as well. Like he's a guy that Slava can just put out there, and it's like he doesn't seem to have to like coach him. He just sort of does his job and just sort of goes
Yeah,
out there, defends, goes back onto the bench, comes back out when he needs to, and that's a perfect guy you want in the team.
yeah,
Yeah.
I really like
Um. So that's a big win for Peterborough. And we'll talk about them on the Sunday as well. But let's go on to our game then, because that's the next one in line. And wow, what a game at the Link Centre. The Wildcats versus the Knights. You'd probably say the Wildcats, this was a must-win game. It was you and my dad, Dan, were talking about it being a 4-pointer either way. Either Leeds get that 4 point in front of Swindon to increase it to 7, or it goes the other way and Swindon get it down to 3. So it was a 4 point a game, and the Wildcats come out absolutely flying. Just having Josh and Dylan back, you could see that's the best. Aaron said it in his interview. That's the most he's ever rolled the lines, all 4 lines, the whole game, all 60 minutes. Jake Britnell, we go on about him. We could talk about him for ages, but we will talk about that first goal because it just set the tone of the game, didn't it? Just probably one of my favorite goals I've ever seen. The best one I've ever got on record, obviously doing the media for the Wildcats. Just toe drags past Baldwin and just dekes past the best goalie in the league like it was nothing and puts it in the back of the net. And he is just on an absolute another planet. And I've told you this stat earlier, Charlie. Jake Bricknell now has 13 games in a row with 2 or more points, with multi-point games. That is absolutely bonkers. 13 in a row. Just a massive switch for him. And every time he gets the puck, it just looks crazy. But I thought defensively, Charlie, everyone just chipped in, shut the game down, and it was just men versus boys in that game, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, that's probably the best performance of the season for Swindon.
Yeah.
I'd probably put it there, along with maybe MK away. But we had our luck in MK away. We didn't need luck in the Leeds at home game. It was unbelievable. Not one player had a bad game. I think Britnell, and I was someone who critiqued him. He sat me on my ass. I think Jake Britnell right now is the best National League player we've seen. The form he's on since Grant Cooper had that crazy run before he went to Belfast.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen a player as dominant as him
In the
in
last month and a
a
bit.
13 game stretch. Like, honestly, like I remember obviously he had the game against Leeds, and you don't even have to mention that he was the best player on the ice by a distance. Every time they got a puck, he got 4 points. But then he went to Telford, and I watched the stream for Telford, and the game ended, and we'd say that was a decent game for Britnell, but nothing crazy. And the commentator says Jake Britnell was unplayable tonight. And
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, I guess when we watch him every week, we get used to this masterclass he's putting on. But yeah, he really was phenomenal. And I actually think probably my player of the weekend for Swindon, and it goes really under the radar. I thought Jamie Smith was unbelievable this weekend. The young lad, he's only 18, 19 years old for us. I've always loved him, but he's just a beast.
You
He was
won't
like
see
a
him on the
mini
points.
Beveris
Like
at
he
times.
won't mind us
Um,
saying that either.
he was like a mini Eddie Beveris. So yeah, he was really good. What did you think, Dan?
Yeah, what of Jamie Smith?
Me and you
Just
said he was the best player on
Oh
Sunday,
mate,
didn't we?
last night he was unreal. Especially like
Oh, that
the thing that I
shift.
love the most, yeah, the thing that I love
I
the
know what
most
you're on
was
about.
Aaron put him out for the last 4 minutes of the game. Like he put him out there to finish a game. I know it was a big lead. I know it wasn't like under threat, but the fact that he's put Jamie Smith out there, Aaron saw that he had a good game, and he was just getting his stick everywhere, cutting off passes, cross crease, did a nice little a
Oh,
nice little hit in the
bodies.
corner. He was just using every part of his body perfectly, and I think this weekend I think that's the most confident I've seen Jamie Smith as well. Obviously, I didn't see him when he first came into Swindon. I didn't like watch Swindon every week, but I mean, this weekend he just seemed to be loving it at the minute. And I mean, I suppose when a team is playing like that, you are going to have players that are just going to grow in confidence. And I think, especially with the D core he's got with him as well, he's got so many unbelievable D men to learn from in that team, and he's in a perfect place if he wants to grow his game.
Yeah. Shout outs again before we move on, but Balint Costy, 4 assists on the night, moved up to that line with Britnell and Billy. And I know that's quite a nice line to go on to, probably the hottest line in the league, but he went on to it, got 4 assists. Eddie
Oh, that was one of
Bebris,
the best games I've ever seen Bally play.
yeah,
He
Bally
was
was just,
really
he
good,
he
and
could have go on Saturday as well.
he was
yeah,
such a good rat as well. Oh, one
yeah,
of the best rat performances I've ever seen. He was brilliant that night. Like just exactly what I want from Bally. Be a rat, get points, have a good time, and go home laughing. And yeah, brilliant.
yeah.
Sorry.
And then Bebris as well. Leeds didn't get a sniff really all night, and Bebris was a big part of that. It's just his body. He just absolutely bodies everyone, pushes them in the corner, and we limited Leeds to 16 shots, which is just crazy. Antonov, I thought was really good as well. But yeah, the whole team was very good, and we got a massive win on the Saturday. And Telford also got a massive win on the Saturday, and I know the Bees beat Leeds and MK, but I did actually say I think Telford will win this game because one, Telford needed to win, and two, for some reason, the Bees are just better set up against teams which are going to constantly come on and on and on and against them. And it was the import show, Dan, which you mentioned to me. Henderson with two, Thompson with a goal, and Skaleski with a snipe as well. And now that's their three trio. We forgot to mention actually, Luca is now with the Telford Tigers 2 and got 5 goals in his first game, which is a joke. That's the league below the National 1. Luca is playing in, so he's having fun. But these three imports for Telford, Dan, that's their trio now to the end of the season, isn't it? And that's what they've been wanting since the start of the season, really.
Yeah, they've been really unlucky with injuries as well, and always tough to sort of grow line chemistry and stuff like that. They're still really low on D men, which is going to be tough. But yeah, the fact that they've got that trio now and they can start hopefully getting a bit of line chemistry in the top six. We were looking at their lineup and their top six. If once they can get rolling, that top six isn't even that bad. And we were saying it's just a shame they don't have D-men because then you can add Harden into that third line and
Yeah.
really get some depth in there. But hopefully the D-men will sort of start coming back soon. Or I know one guy's obviously going to be out for a
It's a
while.
bummer
But
that because Jake Price, if you didn't know, Jake Price got I think it was an ACL injury, which is the worst you
yeah,
can get.
it's tough.
So sending best wishes to him. But I tell you what, Telford's injuries for D men and just not being able to have a full decor, it has been very unlucky. And if they do miss playoffs, I think they can look back at it and say we were quite unlucky with the decor. And Mitchell King obviously went off on the Sunday, which is a kick in the teeth as well. So yeah, but they got a big win on that Saturday against Bees, which is big for them. And then Sheffield Steel Dogs, after not putting the chances away on the Friday, well, Ivan Bjorkley Nordstrom, who you said, Dan, was a shout for our player of the week, he decides to get a hat trick against the MK Lightning. And that just makes this top three battle even more interesting, doesn't it? It's a huge win for Sheffield, but that's a tough loss away, Charlie, for the Lightning, isn't it? Especially with Leeds losing.
Yeah, first of all, big credit to Sheffield with a bounce back result. Not an easy game to say the least, and they had a tough night against Leeds before, where I'm sure they used up a good chunk of energy. And yeah, they put in a really good performance, especially I believe Dan Crow started that game,
Yeah.
and Dan Crow didn't have the best game the night before, conceding 6. So I think he made a very good comeback game, and Nordstrom has been a big standout for me whenever he's played for Sheffield. I've always liked the way he plays. He plays hockey the way I like hockey played, hard hockey, two-way hockey, and he can do most things with the puck. But for MK, it just screams similar problems they've had for the past 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Brilliant at home. I know they didn't play a home game this weekend, but they just struggle to get results sometimes in the away games. And don't get me wrong, Sheffield's not an easy place to go to, but which I'm sure Swindon will find out on Sunday. We've not got an easy game there. So I'm not like taking anything away from Sheffield, but a team of MK's quality and standard. It could have been a weekend where they gained, well, I say gained, but got 2 points and Leeds dropped 2 points.
Yeah.
Because obviously only had a 1 game weekend. And I feel like MK fans would agree with me when I say opportunity missed. And
well,
I think
it is a big opportunity missed.
I think the statistic I found, and quote me if I'm wrong, I believe if you add Lawrence's, Forsberg's, Wallace's, and Spadafor's points together, they're only 5 or 6 points above Jake Britnell. And I'm not saying that I know Jake Britnell's the top point scorer in the league, but when you add 3 imports full times worth of points together, and you can only just scrape the top point scorer in the league, the MK fans are right when they say they need for more from their imports. They need more points because their Brits have been pretty good this year, but I think they need a bit more points from their imports to really help them in some of them tough games.
Yeah, it was Sisters and County who got the goals as well on that game, and I just think one thing they need to it's tough in it because we'll look at the standings in a bit, but yeah, it is an opportunity miss. But again, take nothing away from the Steel Dogs; they got a huge bounce back, and yeah, it's another top team which the Steel Dogs are taking down. And it's interesting they switched the line as well on the Saturday. So they put Walker Sommer and Tremblay together with Phillips, and then Nordstrom went on to top line. So Nordstrom was running that line on his own with Ulrich and not Ulrich, sorry, Halfors and Ripley. So a really nice game for Nordstrom, and then the Solway Sharks just an absolute beating on the Bristol Pitbulls, 8-1, and we're looking at the points. Gardiner, I think, did you say he got a 7 point night, Dan, or a 6 point night? Dunbar got like 5 assists. Just absolutely crazy. Cal Beatty got on the score sheet again. And yeah, I haven't seen the highlights, but it just sounds like it wasn't the greatest from Bristol, and it was one of the best games Solway have played.
Yeah, and obviously go in Solway as well. It's going to be tough. But we've said it before. Solway are a team that they need to just get confidence. They need to gain a bit of momentum. So when they do find themselves in games like that against Bristol, when they're scoring, they just need to keep scoring. Like they're not gonna sort of slow down because they just need to get these players sort of rolling a little bit. I know obviously Gardner's been getting points up this year, Dunbar and stuff like that, but I'm more talk about the depth guys that are needed to get points. They really need to start getting some depth scoring, start getting some confidence through the line. So when you've got a game like that, it's a perfect time for those players to really sort of up their game, just try and get a bit of a buzz from that to try and carry over to the next games and come into the end of the season as well.
Yeah. Sorry if I'm sniffing a bit. I do have a cold. So allow that. But yeah, massive win for Solway. And I remember, Charlie, you said they just if they can they just want minimum 2 points a weekend.
Yep.
Just 2 points a
That's what
weekend. They
need.
got the home game done. I know they didn't win on the Sunday, but they
Telford
got
got
the
2 points this weekend, so they don't gain anything on them.
Yeah.
And I think they've got quite a healthy lead ahead of them.
They've got 4 points and a game in hand. So
4 points in a game in hand, so just 2 points each weekend. Keep that consistency. And Solway, I think if they got 2 points every weekend till the end of the season, I think they'd make playoffs.
yeah, they're a really good home team. And then moving on to the Sunday, fair play to the Bristol Pitbulls. You watched this game, Charlie, on the stream. I was caught bits of it whilst we were up to Telford, Dan. But 4-3 to the Steel Dogs against the Pitbulls on penalty shots. Walker Sommer with another 2, and then he got the shootout winner. But fair play to Bristol, Charlie, without Bailey Harewood, who was with Cardiff, and they won the Continental Cup. He actually got an assist, just missed this
Could have scored a
breakaway,
goal.
nearly scored it, and then Pellini put in the rebound. So fair play to him and the Devils. But yeah, Bristol, again, I just want to bring up this stat. Bristol Pitbulls, very unlucky. They have gone to overtime. Let me just check. I believe they have got so the Bristol Pitbulls have got 7 overtime losses, which is just a kick in the balls. Oh, Charlie's got the killing thing. 7 overtime losses, Dan. It was another shootout one. I think they've got 5 shootout losses, which is just a kick in the
The
teeth, isn't
opposite to
it? But
MK.
pardon.
That's the opposite to MK.
I know MK have won 5 and Bristol have lost 5. So they've just got a penalty shootout curse, but that is a good point for Bristol, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, going to Sheffield as well. After Sheffield had just beaten MK, I know it's their third game in 3 days, but
Sorry, my cat's just jumped up, the claws out. Go on, carry on, Dan.
but yeah, going out to Sheffield and taking it all the way to a shootout. I know they would have wanted the 2 points, but gaining a point is after that hard game against Solway, they're going to take that point. But yeah, it's just really unlucky that they take it so far and they keep in games until like overtime, take it to shootout, and then they just lose it like that. It's so tough. And when a team like Bristol, when they need these wins and they need to get a bit of momentum and confidence, it's just a real like put your head down. Like it's just so tough to take because they've just held on for so long. But they just need to keep going, just keep rolling, and just see what they can get for, coming into the end of the year now.
Wilinski, I know you mentioned it, Charlie, but he got his first goal. A really nice snipe as well. So he's off the mark. But again, fair play to Sheffield as well. I know it wasn't their greatest game, but it was their third game in a row. And they played Leeds and MK the night before. So it was never going to be easy. I think you could see it was a bit of tired legs from Sheffield come that second and third period. But they got a 4 point weekend. 4 out of 6 points. They probably would have taken that before the weekend started,
Yeah,
especially
especially against the top two team
yeah,
in the league.
Yeah,
and especially after losing the first game as well. So fair
Yeah.
play to them, and that's a big 2 points for them to just try and get that fourth spot because they're quite close behind Hull. Hull, Peterborough, and Sheffield are really really close. So moving
We
on
predicted
then.
this at the start of the season. All I'm saying is we did predict that. We are the prediction kings at the
I
moment.
think that was quite a bog standard prediction though. Them
No,
being
I
like
don't think
really
it was.
tight.
At the start of the season, we said the top three would be Swindon, Leeds, MK, and then we
Yeah,
said the other three would be Peterborough, Hull,
yeah.
and whatever
Sheffield.
the team is, Sheffield, and then we said there'll be Solway, Talford, and Raiders, which I think it is, and then we said Bristol and
Well, I didn't say Telford would be in a plus one, mate.
No, but you said they'd be battling for one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
We got
just
the
fair enough.
brackets, the four categories right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's
Charlie,
too good.
you got the finalists wrong, mate, both of them. So don't start
I
piping
don't
up with the
remember that, mate.
prediction.
All I remember is I got 4 out of 4 playoff predictions right. That's the only thing.
Yeah, that's last year's news, mate. We
Yeah,
don't
don't
care
care,
Yeah,
mate.
about
That lives
that's
rent free in
on
every
there.
one of your heads.
Right. Next game is the Leeds Knights and the Berkshire Bees. And you said to me, Charlie, before we started, Max, or was it you, Dan? No, it was you, Dan, sorry. Max Wright say 58 shots. He had 62 on him.
that.
Just absolutely bonkers. But the Knights get it done in the end. They rebounded after that
Mate.
tough loss in Swindon, and they got the 4 point like Sheffield. They got the 4 points out of the 6, and they needed to win that game, didn't they? But the Bees ran them close. It took two power play goals in the third period to get that 4-1 lead. But it's a tough one for the Bees not getting a 4 point weekend, Dan. But it's Leeds, isn't it?
Yeah, and the thing is, they're going to Leeds, and it's a 4-1 game. Like
Yeah.
I know, Wright again is going to be a big part of that, and I don't know how many times we can say it, but Wright can win you games like that. And I mean, yeah, they got really close, and I think there would have been a few Leeds fans in that building that were getting a bit nervous at times because they were sort of like, we can't score on this guy. we can't do it. And especially in their own rink as well.
Yeah.
Normally they're quite a dominant team in that rink, but it just seems like Max Wright again was just shutting the door on every single shot they had. And the fact that it was two power play goals that gave them that lead just shows how dominant Wright was.
Yeah.
And you give Leeds that obviously that time and space on the power play and stuff like they are going to make you pay, and I'm sure Bees would have been tired as well. So it's a tough game for Bees, but at the same time they can't be too annoyed about that because think about it, you're going up against Leeds, you're going to Leeds, and Leeds have just had a really tough game before, so they're going to want to answer back from it. So it's not all bad news for Bees, and they're just going to be trying to go into this weekend with their
Yeah,
heads high.
they've got a massive game on Friday, so they have to win that.
I want to mention a statistic because Max Wright just fascinates me as a goalie. But in his last 5 games, he's faced MK, Leeds, Telford, and he's faced 256 shots. And just to put in context, he's faced Leeds, MK, and he's got a 9-3, a 9-6, a 9-5, and a 9. He's such a sick goalie. Like, all I'm saying is, next season, I would not be surprised if he got a call from some National League teams which may have a Brit goalie right now and say, "Are you interested in signing for our team?" Because he is phenomenal. And yeah, I think he'll make some teams. I don't know what teams think. Do I keep my Brit goalie or do I go for it?
I would hate to see what it'd be like with a contending team. Like, imagine a contending team in front of Max Wright.
He's
that
holding
is
60
disgusting.
shots and getting like a 9-6 save percentage.
That is crazy. If you like got him like 30 shots a game, if that, like that's easy money for him. Like that is easy.
Yeah, he can
do that in his sleep.
It's going to be interesting to see. I think the one thing I'll give a lot of credit for Wright for is he's put himself in a good situation for a European contract next year, whether that's in a European league or the national league we're in. I think he's put himself in a good position. He plays for a bottom of the league team, and he's the third highest save percentage in the league whilst facing like 50 shots a night.
We and Dan were looking yesterday. I know this is a bit random, but we were looking at import goalie stats from the EPIHL days, and MK's on Robney had a 9.33.
What a goalie!
He was
and I know the D was much better in there as well, so they're going to protect him more. But he was an absolute joke for Milton Keynes. So I thought I'd bring that up because we look at that.
We had some good conversations. Every time we seem to go on a long trip, like with all three of us, or like me and Charlie, and it's just like we talk about all like the old school like rosters and stuff like that, like back in the day. And it's so good going back, like when you watch obviously the highlights last night of the Swindon Bees game. It's just stuff like that. It's such like nostalgia, and you sort of forget like some of the players.
As we were talking about the Bees, that's another one. So we were saying we could do another whole episode on this, but the craziest game I've ever watched, I think.
That was a crap game.
Bees, we were beating Bees 8-1, and the Bees in the final period were 8-1 down. The Bees got it back to 8-8 in the third period. Went all the way to penalty shots, and Swindon did win in the end. But the Bees were 8-1 down with 15 minutes to go, and they got it to 8-8. It's just absolutely crazy. But yeah, we'll save that for another podcast where we could just talk about old school hockey, or maybe even a live stream. The next game then was the Raiders versus the Hull Seahawks, and what a performance from the Seahawks. Both teams obviously, Raiders didn't play on the Saturday, but both teams obviously not having points going into the game. And Bobby Chamberlain, a hat trick for him. The goal scoring for him just continues. He's now got 35 goals, the highest scoring Brit in the league. He is ridiculous. And then Cornell and Hewitt as well getting on the score sheet. But yeah, and Bonner as well, another viral video of him. But yeah, that's what Hull can do, Dan. And I can imagine it was a very quick, fast-paced game, and the Hull have come out on top in that one.
Yeah, and it sounded like it was sound like the fans were getting into it as well with the players. Hull seem to love games like that where they can sort of get under the fans' skin, or sort of play to the fans, play to the crowd. They got a few crowd pleasers in that team, but at the end of the day, they went to Romford and they got the job done. A lot of teams have gone to Romford and struggled this season, but and obviously Romford beat them last time they went to Romford. I was at that game. I think that was the last time they went to Romford. But yeah, there we have with that. They went to Romford. got the 2 points and going back to Hull, and they'll be happy.
Yeah, it's a big win for Hull, and I don't think they're going to win the league. I don't think they're going to be in that race come end of it. But hey, if they need some momentum, and if they have Hull, if they have Romford in their playoff group, at least they know now.
I think
Oh,
they'll
we
play a
can,
big part as well in who
yeah,
wins the league, which
we
is
can,
quite exciting for them.
yeah, we can beat them. So yeah, Peterborough though, they are probably along with Swindon probably on the top form teams right now. They beat the Solway Sharks again. It feels like they're playing the Sharks every week at the moment, but the third time in 2 weeks, and they beat them 4-1. And it was the Cam Huff show getting a hat trick, two on the power play, and then one at the end as well. So a 4-1 win for Peterborough. And again, Levine, just another really solid game from him. Obviously, Jordan Marr back in Peterborough. I know he did a little interview as well after the game, which is nice to see. But yeah, just Peterborough doing what they're doing, Charlie, and just getting some wins together. Now they've got pretty much a full team back as well.
I like Peterborough. Maybe an unpopular opinion, but I just like them. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool to see Peterborough ticking away. I think in that Solway game, I think it was the Luke Ferrara line kind of just scored
Yeah,
all the goals, and then the Bing had a good
class.
game in the D. But I think Peterborough with a fully strength D core is a tough team to beat. And it's nice to see them kind of have that fitness again. And yeah, I think yeah, Peterborough are doing well. I think Hunt goes under the radar sometimes by some fans, but I think he'll get that credit for playoffs. And then obviously Callum Buglass is sick as well, like I said earlier. So yeah, it's Peterborough doing well at the moment, and I wouldn't be surprised seeing Peterborough do it. And one thing I will say is we did look through the title race stuff, and I think Peterborough may have the biggest say on the title race to go. So I think they're going to have I think from seeing the fixtures they've got against the top three teams, I think they have a tough end to the season. So Slava can work some of his magic against MK and Leeds. That would be nice.
Yeah, Slava. Well, Peterborough have got Leeds double header this weekend, so for Swindon's sake, we're hoping Slava can pull out maybe a win or two. But the final game of the weekend, Dan, we travelled down, just me and you in the end. It started off as us three and Dad, then it went down to me, you, and Dad, and then Dad stayed at home. So me and you, Dan, traveling back up in the car, which I puked out of 50 times last time. I wasn't sick this time. I actually, I actually shouted to Dan, "Quick, pull over!" And he thought I was going to be sick again. I just need a wee, so he got deja vu there. But yeah, 7-2 win for the Wildcats in the end against the Tigers. Dylan Lipsy getting on the score sheet, a really nice goal. He was on there with Malas and Nell, which is not a bad little duo to be on. And I said it in the car. The game which Charlie doesn't go and
I
watch,
hate it.
Malas will have a masterclass. He scores two.
Oh, mate, it's so annoying. I think I've watched like two Malas goals this year. He scores whenever I'm not at the game. I'm either in another country or I've decided I don't want to go to the away game today. I want to focus, do some work stuff, or my mate was preaching at church. But the games I don't go to, Malas always cooks and scores. What was the away game when I was abroad? I can't even remember now. But yeah, it was funny. And also, the funniest bit as well is the fact I was at church for just the first 25 minutes of the game. So I watched the last 35 minutes. He scores both goals in the first period. It's so annoying. I haven't even seen the goals. I've got to wait for the flipping highlights. It's so frustrating.
They were good goals as well. So the first one was the typical, we couldn't quite get it going on the power play. There was about 30 seconds left. The puck comes to Malazinski, just absolutely twats one top corner. Then the second one was really good strength by Nell over to Bradley, who I thought had a brilliant weekend. 2 goals on the weekend, and an assist as well, and Malas got his second. But again, Dan, just an away game which teams have struggled with. MK have lost there. Leeds have only won by 1 goal there twice, and Swindon wins 7-2. And I know Telford only had 3 or 4 D men, and then Adam Harden playing there as well. But we did make it look really comfortable, didn't we?
Yeah, and the thing that I did like as well, I said it to you at the game, but on the Saturday against Leeds, Nell and Malazinski didn't really They obviously played well, but they didn't really have
He
any
went on the
impact on the
points.
game.
Yeah.
But you went to Telford, and I thought Nell and Malazinski really set the tone for that game. Like they came out and they were the guys that were looking dangerous. And I think that just shows how effective rolling those four lines is, like Nell said, because it just gives guys like Nell and Malazinski that do need that rest, and they'll admit that they do. It just gives them that rest so they can go out and they can be fully ready and they can really put out like 100% every shift. And they don't have to sort of like save their energy for a little bit and they can just get back on the bench, recuperate their energy, get back out there and do it again. And I
I
thought
think,
they had a really good game. And
yeah,
like I said, they set the tone from the start.
I think you have to have the right players to run four lines, though. It's all good, like trying to run four lines, but I think this year, for the first time, we've actually got a full roster which we can run those four lines or 11 forwards, which we did before Antonov come in. Josh and Dylan are really stepped up and they
Oh
do
yeah.
their job so well. And then Dylan and Josh will hop in on the score sheet like now and again with some goals. And it's nice to see Dylan getting the score sheet. So Swindon are rolling at the moment. I think people are kind of like see other fans now are like, oh, okay. Swindon, we're talking about Leeds and Milton Keynes. Swindon are getting up there now. And I don't really want to talk about this title race because we talk about it enough off the podcast and anything, it can change in a weekend. And that's the beauty and also the pains of hockey. So we're not going to talk about that. But looking at the table, obviously Leeds are top by 1 point. Wildcats and Milton Keynes are on the same points. Milton Keynes are ahead on head to head, even though Wildcats are in second on the National League website. But the stat which jumps out to me on that, and us three have looked at it, the wins in regulation, Leeds have got 26, the Wildcats 23, and the Lightning 18. And I know you still win in overtime, and they've just dogged out those games, Milton Keynes. But is that sustainable come end of the season? I think that's a big rhetorical question, which I'm going to leave. And I think Milton Keynes need to start picking up these regulation wins, just killing off games. And then the whole Seahawks, Peterborough and Sheffield, 44, 43, 42. It's just so tight in those in that fourth to sixth place. And then Romford on 35. They've got to be careful they don't slip down into that playoff race. As I said, I do think they'll be all right, especially with the new import coming in. But they don't want to slip too many points down. And then Charlie, as you said, 32 points Solway, 28 for Telford, Bristol on 27, and the Bees with 19. So still,
27.
yeah, Bristol.
Even though I'm not convinced by them when I watch them, they still have managed to pick up a fair few
Yeah.
points. I know I'm going to annoy Bristol fans here. If you win all 5 shootouts, your joint playoff spot.
Oh, that's tough. That yeah.
So to be fair, like as much as there's been the frustrations, they're not. They're much better than last year. Like they're
The one
much better
thing,
than last
what I
year.
said to Charlie, this was before the Sunday game. I said to him after Solway battered them 8-1, I said, one thing Barry does manage to
I don't
do
get it.
is he always manages to get the team ready for the next game so they don't get battered. And they come away Sheffield with a point after losing 8-1. They lost to Swindon 8-0 or 8-1 as well. They then rebound with a big 10-4 win against Peterborough. It's like they do seem to rebound from those tough losses. They've just got to try and cut out those tough losses a bit more.
Yeah, no, I agree. And even like just to mention on the Sheffield game, because I did watch it, I want to give them their credit. They didn't have a shot for the first 12 minutes of the game, and they didn't concede more than one. And then suddenly their first shot, Smetham just sniped in the back of the net. And they're one of them teams where they have to just take the chances they get. But yeah, they always seem to surprise me, Bristol. I thought they were going to get smoked in Sheffield, but they like without Harewood, I think they didn't have,
Yeah.
and they just found a way to just chip away. And yeah, I think it's a frustrating season for Bristol because there's so many things you look at and you're like, oh, da, da, da. But actually, when you look at the big picture, they've had a much better season than last year, and I still think there's plenty of ways to improve the team they have. So hopefully, well, I don't, yeah, it could look up for Bristol for sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's a tough end of the season
It's
because
going to be tough, yeah. They're
yeah,
still in and about it, though.
yeah, but yeah, they can pick up like you said, Jack. I think with most teams in this league, you lose 3 games in a row and you're out of whatever race you're in. But if you win 3 games in a row, you're normally gonna maybe sneak ahead of some of the teams above you. So it's a good position for teams to be in, and
That
everyone's
Friday
got something to
game
play
is
for.
big for them as well.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah, they
big
don't want
game
to get
down.
dragged into the bottom of the league race rather than the playoff race.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if he came back. Me and Jack were sort of like in and off, in and out of the stream. But Whitesay also got injured. I don't know if he came back into the game,
I
but
didn't see him get
Yeah,
injured,
he
so I
got a
clearly
big
wasn't
ho-
paying
ho-
FOP, I
attention.
think.
hopefully that's not something that's going to be long term, and hopefully he can. It was just like a dead leg or something like that, and he can get back
Oh
into
no, I
it
think he
because
came back out. I think so. Yeah, that was it got given as a
it was
trip.
it was it was like an
Yeah,
it was I'm guessing it was like
He
a knee on
looked
knee.
really awkward.
yeah, I think it was
Yeah,
knee on knee. And yeah, I think he came back, but I don't know why I think
but
that. I think I'm probably wrong, but yeah.
if he didn't, then hopefully it's like not long term, and he can get back out there because he's a D man. He's a young D man. He's got a lot of talent, got a lot
He's
of
really
things to
good at
prove at
GB as well,
Bristol.
actually.
Yeah, and he's a guy that Bristol are going to want to keep hold of for the future, and he just needs to grow within Bristol. So yeah, fingers crossed to him. If he didn't come back, then it's not long term, and he can get back out
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll end it then with the points race.
there.
And Jake Britnell is now joint top. And the two people at the top, Britnell and Sobchak, go face to face this Saturday. So that is going to be a great little battle. And then Walker Sommer and Sean Miller are joint third on 74 points. And then, as we were saying, just Bobby Chamberlain. You look around Bobby Chamberlain, it's just all imports. He is currently in sixth position with 64 points. So he's doing really, really well. So fair play to Bobby Chamberlain. And then Walker Somerdan. We talked about him possibly hitting that 60 goal mark. Well, he's got 42 now after this weekend. And he's got 18 games remaining. So he literally needs a goal per game now until the end of the season to get that 60 goal mark. And then it's still Gospel and Rennie Marr at the top of the save percentage. So that is all this episode. If we've had an interview in this one, we appreciate whoever it was hopping on. But if we don't have one, we will have some in the future. And we hope you've enjoyed this episode. As Charlie said at the start, he's going to try and hop in now and again, but he might have a little break from the main podcast. But me, Dan, Dad, whoever we bring on, we'll be able to keep doing it every week. So we appreciate everyone hopping on. Follow our socials at Macca's Talk Hockey, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Bye.